Jerry, you had a tweet, I think it was this morning, that was on this topic, and you sounded like you had an eye-opening experience a little bit, because Trevor, Jimmy, and we've talked about this before, how the playoff broadcast booths, and normally it kind of seems like whiny people on the internet, right? I mean, that's a lot of times it is, and sometimes I'm one of those whiny people. Baseball has an easy, there is a solution to the answer. Getting there is probably not as easy as we'd like to think in our heads, but the booths in playoff games, and I'd like us to kind of land on a consensus here, because I will bring up my Yankee predicament, but kicking out the booths of the home teams or either teams in the postseason is one of baseball's biggest misses right now.
I agree, man. When you're playing, you don't think about, the broadcast booth. So there's two sides to this. So the Mets, whom, I obviously cover, their radio is, one of the best in the world with Howie Rose and Wayne Randazzo. The radio guys get to do their job. Yeah. It's the TV guys, guys and girls, their broadcast, they don't get to do it. They've grinded with this team sometimes for long time without making the playoffs. They've been with this specific team for they travel with the team. And then the playoffs come and the fruits of your labor are about to be there, and they have to take a sideline to the national broadcast. It is kind of cruel. And having become on this side of things, I feel for, specifically the Mets guys, Gary, Keith, and Ron, Steve Gelbs, all the SNY producers, directors, camera people that have invested so much, and they've done a great job all season too to just basically say, beat it. That's tough.
There's just really no way around it, though, right? I mean, you're paying big money to host these postseason games, and then you can have like a simulcast where you have like an alternate channel, so each team gets the broadcast, because you can't just have the home team have the broadcast, because then if you're a fan of the other team, there's no way you want to listen to that. So it's like, I guess there's really no way around it, but it does. Now that you think about it, the radio guys get to continue to do it. That's awesome for them. But yeah, it's interesting, but is there a system where it could work?
That's what's been circling in my head all day, and the dream scenario, and the one that actually gets me into more trouble, would be, I think you have a national guy, you have a Buck or a Davis who kind of keeps it going, and then I'll use Mets Yankees for an example. Do you have Conan Darling or something like that? But then that gets tricky, because now I'm kicking out Michael Kay, who's a dude I love and is fantastic on the calls. I think the fear is that it would lead to bickering in the booth, because that's one of our biggest things as fans. I think that would be incredible. I mean, could you imagine if you have two opposing announcers kind of not chopping each other down, but being, trying to set the record straight about their team? So I don't know, Trey. You mentioned if those teams could broadcast their games locally still and still have a national draw, I mean, you're losing from national money.
Yeah, you can't do that.
That's never going to happen. So I don't know. I was going to see if you guys had any creative solutions.
I know so for one game, the Apple TV they had on the West Coast, it was the Mets versus the Angels. They brought in Wayne Randazzo, who's one of the radio guys for the Mets, to run host. And then they had their personalities. I think it was Hunter Pence was one of the personalities, but that was nice because they had somebody there familiar with the team leading the show. But even that couldn't really work, because then you miss out on, the big money for Joe Buck and those guys to do the national broadcast. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that the booths, the TV people, the personalities for all the teams that make the playoffs get the cold shoulder. And that's a tough pill to swallow.
I have a solution.
Yes.
Okay. Because people complain about who's in the booth. That's what we're talking about now. You get so used to having people that you like, and then also the national broadcast, there's been people there in those positions that just look on social media, they don't get rave reviews. I mean, I know certain people do like them, but I think networks need to do the best job that they can do at finding the best people. And it shouldn't be legacy type. I'm not saying Joe Buck. I'm just saying it shouldn't be hey, you had the job last year, you're going to have it for the next 5, 6, 7 years, which just kind of seems like what it is. Like, we should make sure we're finding the best people. And like, I don't know if they necessarily always do that.
It gets really tricky. I mean,
I guess that's all relative to who the best
right.
is.
And that's, in my head, the best solution would be, hey, if we could tell those, and again, maybe we'll get on some people's shit list with this, but if you tell those big national broadcasts, like, hey, you know, Joe Puck, who I think you got to pay him a pretty shekel per broadcast, like, if it was a Michael K or whoever your team's broadcaster is, if they almost advance with the team, I don't know. If that becomes kind of a sick system too, because then I don't know. You get, are people jumping ship because they're like, hey, the who's got a good young core? The Mariners look really good. Does Boog Sciambi like leave the Cubs to go to the Mariners for 3 years? I don't know. That turns into broadcaster roulette a little bit, but it feels like there's somewhere in there's an advantage for baseball that other sports don't have because of its regionality, that if they can tap into it the right way, it feels like there's a win there. I don't know how we get there.
Yeah, I'm not sure the answer. I do know what sparked it for me was I was having a conversation and somebody mentioned like, yeah, it sucks for Gary Cohen because he's had all these Mets moments, the great calls that you hear, and all of a sudden he doesn't get to call it in the biggest moments, the, you know, signature phrases that you've grown to love in your own fan bases. That doesn't exist anymore. You know, Michael K has so many calls that you just, you know, if Judge hits an amazing home run for 62, he's going to have a moment. But in the playoffs, in Game 7 of the World Series, it's going to be somebody else. Like, it's wild to me. I don't know the answer. Baseball's in a unique position because nobody watches a regional broadcast of your football team. You know, it's always, you know, for the most part, you're going to watch a national broadcast. You're going to see Troy Aikman or, right, you know, whoever the case may be. But baseball's different, man.
I mean, why not you have your booth and then each team, not a sideline reporter, but maybe like an extra color guy that they'll break to if they want you to talk about your specific team. I think that works. I mean, then you're taking work away from the Ken Rosenthals and all those guys. But I think people would enjoy like their own people talking about their team. I think maybe that's one way we work around it. I don't know. I'm full of ideas today.
I love it.
Some good, some bad. Just throw them out there.
Story of talking baseball. And yeah, Trev, I know you talked about it on Baseball Today a little bit with, you know, Judge's potential historic call coming up. They are on Fox Thursday, they are on Apple TV Friday, and they are on ESPN Sunday. So, you know, all that talk, I know there's obviously heavy layers to it, but like you said, I mean, with the opportunity to call a moment like that and it's taken away from you potentially, because that's it's nuts.
Can I tell you something? So hold on. You had a bat earlier. This is behind me at all times. This is my one knock in the show.
Yep.
So the only regret I have about my knock in the show is that it was a Facebook Live game. And the call, it was brutal because they cut back to something. And so it sucked for me too. I actually haven't heard the radio call, but I'm sure Howie Rose crushed it. I'm going to have to get on those guys and send it over to me. But it's a legit because nobody understood the context of freaking Jerry Blevins getting a knock. They were like, and he gets a hit. Like, he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, I think he's two-way. He played at Dayton.
That guy's fired.
Hey, I hit 500 that year. That's 250 career hitter in the show.
Whoops.
Never swung and missed in 4 at-bats. No big deal.
Ow.
Fouled the ball off my shin, almost retired on the spot. That shit hurts, Trev. That hurts.
Yeah, it's
you guys are tough.
Comes with the
gig.
Everyone
knows that. I let the people on this show know about position players.
Good. God.
Thank you. And me, the starting pitchers.